Well, hello everybody. Welcome to the WuMao show. I am today um, joined by Jerry Gray and by Lee Barrett and Ziv
Hi.
Glikman. Today, the topic is
Hello.
going to be why China news gets politicized so much. But before we do so, gentlemen, I would like to take a moment to comment on the shooting that took place in Atlanta um, earlier today here in China. Um, it's well, the first thing to say is that I would say that we all feel for the victims of this shooting. There are 8 people that died today, and a lot of it has got many things in common. Most of those people were Asian. Important to mention that this topic um, is going to delve a little bit into racism and why there is so much hate against Asian people. And we planned this topic almost 10 days in advance. So this unfortunate event is nothing but a very sad um, situation that happened on the day that we planned to do this live show. So I would like to first of all welcome each and every one of you guys and tell me how you guys are doing. And well, let's get the conversation going. So why don't we start with Jerry? How are you, sir?
I'm very well, thank you very much. Very warm here in southern Guangdong.
Yeah. All right.
Mm.
And Lee.
Hi, yeah, it's pretty warm here in Shenzhen, and I'm good. It's busy at the moment, but yeah, all good. We're working hard to bring those videos to you.
Yeah, we saw the one about the hotel. Pretty interesting. We're going to talk about that too towards the end, right? And Mr. Ziv Glikman, how are you tonight?
Hello, I am okay. As we are not so far from each other, it's kind of warm here too. The AC is working, and just letting all the audience giving a happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody.
Yeah.
But I don't politicize China, so I'll give them that.
All right. There's already 23 comments. I'm going to just start talking about what our topic is today. We have a series of things that we want to address in a particular order. We are going to start talking about one of the most common problems, which is vaccine diplomacy. Um, well, we've all heard this news and these stories about China offering vaccine to different countries. For example, this one here: Brazil needs vaccines. China's benefiting. The New York Times. Um, there's there's a lot of negativity coming from something that is intended to be, well, goodwill and helping people. Jerry, I understand that you were writing an article
I've
about
written, yes.
this.
Yeah,
Mhm.
just yesterday finished, sent it off to a couple of publishers, and the feedback is quite good. I may get some editorial or editing to do, but generally speaking, yeah, I've written an article and done a little bit of research into vaccine diplomacy, completely unrelated to this. It was just a coincidence that you talked to me about it at the same time as I was researching that. One of the things I've found is that China is pretty much donating, I think 53 different countries donating. We're not talking about selling, we're talking about donating. The sales of vaccines are going to 27 other countries plus, but the negotiations for 27 other countries and 3 different vaccines with a 4th that has literally just been released for trials. So it is really a hot topic right now.
Mm-hmm. I've heard a lot of situations because I remember when I was making a video in December about different companies and different countries kind of like endorsing their own vaccines if this was going to be a problem. So there's different governments attacking different vaccines. So Pfizer this, and then the Seneca, I forgot the name, has this
AstraZeneca.
issue. AstraZeneca. So there's all this politicization of something that we should all be working in the same direction. I would like to ask Lee and Ziv, do you have any opinion about this? How do you feel about this? Why don't we go with Lee first?
Yeah, I think it's down to that. You know, countries like the USA and to Europe for an extent, the virus sort of was rampant there, so they are more in need of these vaccines than China, where it's pretty much under control. I think also you've got to look at the manufacturing capacities. China, I would imagine, has a much bigger manufacturing capacity for vaccines than the US and Europe. And they're taking a sort of approach where it's us first, whereas because that's the only way that they're going to be able to control it. Certainly in the UK, they've vaccinated, I think, pretty much 50% of the population now, and it's only just coming under control. You know, it's only recently that the cases have started to drop, and I think China are in a very different position where they don't need such an urgent rollout of the vaccine here within China because it's pretty much under control without a vaccine. So they're in the position where they can help other countries. I also think there's a cost issue involved as well, because if you look at, like, especially American pharmaceuticals, they're all about profit, whereas China are not so much about the profit, you know, and they're much more willing to ship vaccines to these sort of countries. And I think it's a good job they are, because a lot of these countries wouldn't have got any vaccine out of Europe or the US. I know there's a program that the WHO are running. I forget the name of it now, but they have a program where, you know, they're all supposed to contribute, but it seems as though it's China as the main contributor at the moment.
I think that's a very valid point right there. The fact that China was able to control the virus without the vaccine, well, in many countries of the West, the vaccine was the only way out.
Can I say something?
Okay, sorry. Let's go to Ziv's idea for a second.
Yeah, I mean, I think that diplomacy in the 21st century is a lot about give and take. It's, you know, what you can provide to others and get maybe a different favor in return. I think it's legit in today's world. For example, Israel recently, there was a situation with an Israeli citizen that was inside Syria, somehow crossed the border and got into inside Syria, and they wanted to get that citizen back. And it was leaked that Netanyahu from Israel, he promised to buy Syria 2 million vaccines in order to get the citizen back. So, I mean, it just shows you that today's diplomacy. I think vaccine diplomacy, yeah, it's probably true. And I think any country would play that if they have the chance.
Jerry, you wanted to comment?
Yeah, just following on from what Lee mentioned, China has the capacity to create 4 billion vaccines by the end of this year. It has the need to vaccinate 1.4 billion people. So again, from what Lee pointed out, there is no transmission of COVID anywhere in China right now, has not been since before Chinese New Year. The only COVID cases inside of China right now are imported COVID cases. So the need for the vaccine is much greater. And China knows that if it's going to do business with these people, so countries like Pakistan, for example, are not getting any help from India. And India is the other country that's capable of creating this many vaccines in a similar space of time, similar numbers, maybe slightly less, but not much. India and China are the two countries that will vaccinate the world eventually. And India is not going to help Pakistan because of their diplomacy issues and
they're
problems.
Big enemy.
So we've got Cambodia, we've got Myanmar, we've got basically all of China's neighbors being vaccinated by Chinese donations or Chinese sales. And the reason for that is not diplomacy per se. It's because that's where much of our local trade, you know, if you think about where those border cities are, trade is crossing the cities, crossing the borders all the time. And it's really useful to have vaccinations in those areas. That's the reason.
I want to, I mean, any one of you knows where you can get a vaccine in China right now? I saw Jerry Good was getting the vaccine today.
Yes.
In Qingdao.
Yeah, I could get one here in Shenzhen.
How do you do that?
my partners had a sort of notification that they're available in our area, so I presume I could just go along to the hospital and get one, I guess.
I've been told in Zhongshan, where I live, that if I'm here next month, I will get a vaccine, even though I was also told people over 60 won't get them. I'm 62, but I've been told, yes, we're all going to get vaccinated starting next month, and it will finish within 3 months.
I didn't hear. Do you think that the Chinese vaccine is safer than other vaccines?
I'm not going to answer that one.
I really don't know enough about the vaccines to know whether they're safe or not. I mean, I feel okay with having one, but the notification my partner got was if you're over 18 and under 60, then you're eligible for it here in Shenzhen.
Somehow,
or in my area in Longgang.
I don't know. I'm not sure I know how to explain it, but somehow I feel a bit safer about the Chinese vaccine than, let's say, Pfizer. But that's just my feeling, my personal feeling. I don't know. Maybe I've been here too long.
Sorry. What I would say is that sorry, give me 1 second. The way that the whole approval by the FDA went ahead was a little bit hasty. It gives you reason to ponder if that was it just felt like it was back in the 60s, the space race, see who gets to the moon first, who comes out with the vaccine first. And I felt that the whole race to a vaccine was a lot of honor and was a lot of pride in that. And well, we are in this particular situation where these countries are fighting for supremacy or are fighting for leadership in the world. Well, on the topic of vaccine diplomacy, I would like to tie us up with the next topic. The next topic, again, about diplomacy, but it's going to be more about debt diplomacy. Who would like to explain what this is and how this is portrayed in the West? Raise your hand.
I can if no one else will. Once again, I've done a little research into this. The idea of debt diplomacy is quite right. There is debt diplomacy. If you go lending stuff to countries, then they are pretty much obliged to do business with you. But those countries that are getting the debts from China, which is the criticism is that China is forcing people into debts and then taking their infrastructure away from them. And the example that's always used is the example of the port in Sri Lanka. What wasn't known is that almost all of the Sri Lankan debt, more than 94% of Sri Lanka's debt, is to IMF and other international funds. 6% or less than 6% was to China. So China's debt level inside of Sri Lanka was so tiny, it was hardly worth talking about. Sri Lanka couldn't afford to pay what they had borrowed to the other countries, not so much to China, because they had a working port that they could have used to pay off their debt. What China did helped Sri Lanka enormously by taking over the running of the port and paying lease fees for that facility. So China is actually paying and contributing now to help Sri Lanka to pay off its other debts. And this has actually happened in several African countries too. So this is not an uncommon thing where China pays a load of money to build infrastructure and then takes over the infrastructure because the locals can't afford to pay it back. Now, you can actually argue whether or not that's diplomacy. You can argue whether that's enforcement. But the fact is, that port was paid for by China, built by China with Chinese money. It's now being operated and paid for by China so that Sri Lanka has a working and operating port and some money to pay off its other debts, which are crippling the country of Sri Lanka because it had 10 years of war just a few years ago. It's in massive debt. Now, anyone can find that information out. I did. I just Googled it. So anyone who says, oh, you're a liar, Jerry, Don't read CNN, BBC, those kind of anti-China things. Go and Google it for yourself. Look at the IMF debt structure. Look at Sri Lanka's own websites, and you'll find this is actually true. And it's the same throughout Africa, throughout South America, where China lends money. They're usually lending money at preferential rates, and they are building infrastructure, which is a little bit different to 500 years of colonialism in Africa, which hasn't built or left any infrastructure. Africa is not poor. Africans are poor.
That's a very interesting difference. Yeah, Lee?
Just a very quick comment. I think if you look at what the West has done in many of those countries, they took the minerals and the resources, or they tried to get the minerals and resources and gave nothing in return. Whereas, okay, in return for building infrastructure, China will have access to some of those minerals and resources, but at least those countries are getting something in return. I feel the West just raped a load of those countries. They just got big corporations in there. We'll extract your oil, we'll extract your minerals, and those countries
Can I add one more point to add to what you just said, Lee? This is a really important point. Historically, what the West have delivered inside of places like Africa and South America, they've delivered education and they've delivered religion. They've also delivered health. They vaccinate and provide things like that. So it's hard to say that they actually didn't deliver anything. True, yeah. But what China is delivering is tangible roads, bridges, rails, factories, buildings. They've even built the CDC headquarters for the whole of Africa. And now, of course, America are unhappy about that because it might be bugged and they might be able to get some advantage. But I mean, the fact is, they're both leaving something. What China is leaving behind is tangible, usable, and future profitable. The UK, Spain, even, as you know from Colombia, they're left behind religion, they're left behind education and health and language, but they didn't leave anything tangible. They just took out everything that they needed.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
So I couldn't hear so well what you guys said, but I mean, the bottom line is that you're saying this is not exactly debt trap diplomacy, right? There is
definitely not a trap.
Win-win situation.
Yes, correct.
Exactly. Yes, I agree with that.
I also think that there's another side to this diplomacy, not necessarily that diplomacy, but the resources that the West went into Africa and went into Latin America trying to get and imposing their forms of government so that they could get those minerals and those natural resources. Well, China's playing an interesting game with some of their rare earth minerals or rare things that are very necessary for semiconductors and things like that. And well, they're now saying, okay, you want to play ball? Let's play ball, right? So you want to make, is it semiconductors that they make, or
it's a lot of electronics things, a lot of electronic parts and stuff like that.
They're basically saying, if you want to use our rare earth, you have to come to China, build a factory, and we'll sell it to you. That's the future of China's rare earth. It's a good strategy.
I think, some of the other countries are suggesting they're going to create their own supply chains for rare earth, but it's quite a polluting process, processing that rare earth materials. And I think that's probably why some of these Western countries haven't done it, because it's not an easy process. It's not something you can just set up and within a few weeks go. It's actually a fairly complex, dirty business as far as I'm aware. So that may be another reason why they've used China, because they just don't want to set it up themselves.
So the whole story is why news gets politicized so much. So why do you think that anything that China does, and when this BRI does, the Belt and Road Initiative, that has a lot to do with the diplomacy, right? Trying to help the surrounding countries and the countries en route to Europe and Africa, to those resources that they also want to tap into. They're trying to stop this particular project that China has been developing for the last 10, 15 years. What do you think is the future for Belt and Road Initiative? Do you think it will be allowed to progress, or will it be stopped?
Fernando, I think we spoke about it a bit when we did a live Will China Rule the World, right? I think it was that one.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
the sentence that kept coming up is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't, right?
Yep.
So yeah, I think that eventually there is no stop to this, because I think that countries will progress and improve their infrastructure, and the outcome would be quite positive. So I think that will allow the One Belt initiative to continue.
Yep. Let me get back 1 second. All right. Anybody has any other comments on that the diplomacy, or let's see if there's any comments or any questions in the comment section. Give me 1 second. Do you guys see anything that is worth addressing?
Yeah, someone said they got the Pfizer vaccine and got pregnant.
All right. The mainstream vaccine in China is inactive vaccine, which does not mean that there is no MMA vaccine. Okay. Anything else that we would like to address? Okay, this is Shenzhou. Even if you have rare earths, you still need to send them to a refinery, which is a complex process. Yeah, the whole idea of decoupling and letting China go on its own and the West trying to do things by themselves, it's a very, very long endeavor. It's not something that would take place within a few years, even probably decades.
Yeah, I think as well, Fernando, you've got the just the logistics infrastructure that China have built to deal with that supply chain as well. That would, you know, a lot of countries just don't have that. I mean, many people speak about, oh, you know, India can do it all, but I've got some good friends in India, and every time I go to visit them, they always talk about how the government just can't get things done. They get paralyzed. Nobody's making a decision, you know. And I honestly think they're still many, many years behind where China is, just from an infrastructure point of view of getting goods to ports and shipped out. And then you look at, like, I don't know, take Guangzhou, for instance. They're popular for making leather goods. So the whole supply industry is all around Guangzhou. You know, you need studs, you need buttons, you need buckles. They have many factories all in those, like, cluster areas. Like Santo is for toys, you know, plastic toys. So they have all the supply chain around there. And I think many other countries just don't have that. And like you've just said, Fernando, it would take many, many, many years to build that up. It's not as simple as just moving a factory from China to somewhere else. You need the whole supply chain and logistics to go with it, you know.
Well, in this topic of politicizing everything that China does, the next interesting topic, if nobody has anything to say again about the diplomacy.
There's one interesting question there. The point from Shirley Chong says, do you guys think that the BRI benefits the world or not? I'd be interested in your opinion. I know my opinion on this.
Yeah. My personal opinion is that China is stepping into this BRI negotiation with a more win-win approach than the West has done. And I'm talking about Latin America, for example. Our experience with the Monroe Doctrine was just one of usurpation. We were just suck our oil out, suck our emeralds, suck, you know, everything. And well, that's what we have experienced in terms of partnerships, and to the point where today, when America says jump, my government would just say how high you want me to jump. It's very subservient relationship. So what China is bringing is liberating in that sense. I don't know how you guys feel about it.
But people are, I think some people in the world are worried about that, because whether the Belt Road Initiative would benefit the world, the part of the world where the projects are going on, of course. The only question is what Fernando was talking about. Will it become like that? Like, with China say jump, they have to jump. For example, in Israel, they're building the port in Haifa, and you know, China has a relationship with Iran. So some people, maybe the doomsday preppers are worried right? If we never get to that, then I think there is no doubt this is improving the world. These projects, this know-how, this massive progress that the infrastructure China is building is bringing, how can it not improve those countries?
Mm-hmm. Guys, I would like to take a second to bring our first super chat of the day. Trevor Noah, thank you so much. Says China, we will help you build and improve. USA will bomb you, so you have to buy from us to improve.
I don't think it's quite accurate, but it's certainly along the right tracks. China is win-win. It really is doing everything for mutual benefit. There's no good saying that China's building all this infrastructure because they love these African or South American or Asian countries. They're not doing that at all. They're doing it because it's beneficial to them. There is no doubt that China is benefiting. But if you take a look at how it's happened internally, rich cities help poor cities in China. That's the way it is. Inside of a rich city, the richest suburbs help the poorer suburbs. Call it socialism, call it communism, call it what you like, but it's a fact of Chinese life that, especially in my wife and I's case, we're very actively involved in charity. We've been to hundreds of tiny little towns and cities, helped because the government says this is what you're going to do. And that is how they work. Now take that, extrapolate that into the international scene. When China goes to Africa to help, they go to Africa to help. They do build the infrastructure, but they do want the minerals, resources, whatever it is that they're there for. So it's win for both parties. It is called win-win.
I think well, China as a country, they have a much longer term view than a lot of Western countries. They're not looking for a return in a couple of years. They're looking 10, 15 years out. And you see that by, they now have plans up to sort of 2035. They have these 5-year plans where you never get that in the West because, 4 years, 2 years sometimes in the US, they're starting to, already look at changing the government. So it becomes a political football. And very little gets achieved. Whereas here, obviously, they don't have that issue having a one party, so they can make much longer term plans. And I think that's the Belt and Road is a long term plan. By building infrastructure in Africa, they will improve those African economies. And as those African economies improve and get richer, it will be China that are manufacturing all the goods to supply to them.
Correct.
So they can see that longer term benefit, whereas I think the West don't look at that in anywhere near the same view as China do.
It's not just politics or trade. Sorry, I'm just finishing that point. It's not just politics or trade. Psychologists call it long-term orientation. It is actually one of the dimensions of Chinese culture. Long-term orientation is much higher than, for example, any of the Five Eyes. They don't have long-term focus. They can't, and it is a feature of Chinese culture and psychology.
Yeah, it's a big factor, I think. I'd just like to say thank you as well to Trevor Norman for he sent a couple of super chats in on our channel. So thank you very much, Trevor. He's a long-term supporter of us, so that's really great.
Appreciate it. Well, there's a couple more topics that I would like to address before we bring our guest Stefana, who's waiting in the background. There's one that's a little bit silly, but we're going to wait for that one a little bit longer. I would like to address now the topic of Beijing. Yeah. Let me bring a picture and we as a panel can discuss. This is something that I picked from Twitter. Don't let Beijing 2020 become Berlin 1936. 1, 2, 3, discuss.
Yeah, I think we spoke about it earlier today, right, Fernando?
Yeah.
So I think that again, back to the main topic here, there is any China news being politicized, and I think that like I told you earlier, some of China's news should be politicized, like other news from around the world, but things are taken out of proportions, right? And this billboard is just showing this kind of taken out of proportions. We spoke earlier about Xinjiang, right? And like whether there are camps there, whether there are no camps there. I think one thing is for sure, this is not Berlin, this is not Germany of 36, so things are easily taken out of proportion with China. It's easy to hate, and this kind of hate sells today, fear mongering. So it's a bit ridiculous.
Yes, I would like to address this very quick message by the Quantum Alchemist. I can only feel for the people who actually lived in 1936 that this is a huge smack in the face for the actual victims of the Nazi regime. Also, okay, we're going to continue talking about Beijing 2022, but want to thank Eric NG or Eric for a super sticker. Thank you so much. Okay, so Beijing 2022. I had a point where we were preparing for this show where I was saying, well, we had Russia 2014 in Sochi, whatever you pronounce it, I don't remember.
Sochi, yeah.
Sochi, and who chooses these locations? Is the International
Olympic Committee,
right?
IOC.
It is the IOC,
And are they what? Now the claim is that they're getting paid to choose China, or they're getting paid to choose Russia. Do you know what I mean? That's what I'd like to put out to the panel. I mean, is there a point to this kind of claim?
I don't know. There is the International Olympic Commission has constantly denied any kinds of forms of favoritism. The people who are serving on the panels to make these decisions are not allowed to receive any gifts. They're not allowed to receive any, even the trips to and from everything has to be itemized. I think those guys are pretty well scrutinized now. They didn't used to be, and it used to be a bit of a rort to get onto one of those commissions. But now I think they're pretty well scrutinized. If they are taking backhanders, it's really under the table, and I very much doubt it's happening nowadays, certainly in the past. But is sports separated from politics? The answer to that is definitely not.
Well, the way that I see it is the U.S., for example, claims that WHO is in the back pocket of China. And they might be claiming exactly the same thing. So it's like international institutions are no longer credible just because one country is just planting seeds of doubt in well, the ethics and the morality of a particular institution.
It's also worth looking at who is the main proponent in the argument for not allowing China or for boycotting the China Olympics. Do you know who the main proponent is? The one country that says this, we're going to lead the world on this. It's Canada.
I can guess.
It's Canada. It's the only country in the world that is geared up to actually hold the Olympics if China is boycotted. So if the International Olympic Commission says we don't want to go to China, we're going to go somewhere else, there's only one other country they can choose.
Canada, yeah.
Yeah, and they're the leaders. They've actually had votes on it in their own parliament just recently. So they're the leaders of this boycott the Olympics. So is it political? If it's being voted on in parliament, for certain, it's political.
Absolutely.
Well, I read something in the news today that there's been a blow to this claim of genocide in Xinjiang. Some votes were passed, and some
this is Australia.
Was passed.
It was Australia. Yeah. It didn't go through, right?
But if you understand the Australian politics, there's two houses. It's a dual house system. The House of Representatives blocked the vote so they wouldn't have to vote against it and therefore alienate their biggest trading partner again further. I mean, it's not really a case of alienating them. It's how deep are they alienating and how far. The House of Representatives blocked the vote, so it didn't go ahead. There was no time to do it. The Senate, which is the higher house, has 76 representatives, and only I think 45 or 46 bothered to vote. And I think it was 33-12 against. I'm not certain of the exact numbers, but something like that. So it wasn't really a true vote of what Australian government feel, because Australian politicians are nearly all individually criticizing China for its political stance. So Australian politicians just refused to vote rather than voted against.
All right, guys. Why don't we go into some of the silly aspects of seemingly very innocuous things in China that get politicized? So I'll start with this one, which is really, really very silly. Food rationing. I mean, everybody had something to do. Everybody posted pictures. Oh, look at this. Okay, why don't we talk about what this was about? Who has any information what this was about?
This
or where
is a few things, right? I mean, the one thing that's really interesting that I want to mention is that China banned all these KOLs, the influencers that are, how do you say it, like overeating, eating large amounts of food, and getting the views on Douyin, TikTok, and other places. And I think about a year ago, China banned that. And whoa, okay, they took away freedom. Wow. But I mean, come on, this is the right thing to do. I mean, I hope this is where I think as foreigners living in China, we understand where there are places where government should interfere. You know what I mean?
Yep.
It's ridiculous that it's criticized, and also the other part of it with Xi Jinping saying food should be saved and not wasted. Of course, I mean, how can you politicize this in a bad way?
He's been saying it since he came to power. I think that was 8 or 9 years ago. He hasn't stopped saying it, so it's not new either. China discourages food waste, somebody just wrote, which is exactly true. But the thing is, when you go to a big party, which I did just a couple of days ago, I was at a family party, 34 tables, each table has 10 or 12 dishes. There's no food left at the end of it because it's all taken home, what's left. So it's not wasted anyway. So that's the important thing. When you see these pictures of massive parties and huge amounts of food, this is mostly not waste. It's going to get used. It's going to get reused. It's going to get put into tomorrow's stir fry. So I wouldn't worry too much about the waste. But it has been going on more than 8 years.
I have to say,
sorry, go on.
Sorry. Liv?
I just wanted to say that every day, just this evening, I had dinner at these vegetarian restaurants across the street from here. And it's a buffet. And they have a rule. You cannot leave anything in the plate. So you know it. When you take food on the plate, you take exactly the amount that you think you're going to eat.
Do they charge you for the individual serve?
They don't allow you to go out to finish your dinner if there is food on your plate.
In the local restaurant I have here, you can order all you want on one of these all-you-can-eat buffets. But if you don't finish it, they charge you. Yes, all you can eat. Excuse me. They charge you a set meal or an individual meal fee for everything that you've left. So if you don't finish your plate, you get charged extra.
Wow.
So everybody finishes.
I do feel there's a little bit more food waste than here than back in the UK, simply because you have this sort of sharing thing here. But I would say if you generally go out with a family and there's food left, they will more than likely take that back home with them.
Yeah,
I think
true.
where I've seen food wasted is generally if you go out and there's maybe officials there or it's a business lunch, and especially if there's foreigners there, they like to try and impress.
It's a little bit of face.
Yeah,
that's
right. And I feel sometimes then that there is food waste. I've been to meals where there's been far too much ordered, and that's why
that's why
I'm sure people at the restaurant eat it after though.
What does get wasted actually gets fed to animals as well. That's the other thing to remember.
Yes, that's right.
So it's not thrown away.
There's actually companies that go around and collect it, isn't there?
Yep.
Those motorcycles with those big barrels.
The blue bins, the blue barrels.
Yeah. That's right.
Give it to the pigs.
Yeah.
I was going to say that I've been to some official dinners and whatnot, and what you see is like all the big wigs, all the big heads walk out first, but the staff, the people that are like lower in the range, right? They will actually take that to go. So even in official and very big things, they get it packed up to take home because it's usually very good food in it.
I think it's kind of different in China to the West. I think in the West, a lot more food gets wasted before it's cooked. So you'll store it in your fridge. Oh, it's out of date, throw it away. Whereas I think here there's a much more thing about sort of fresher food. You don't have a lot of this like ready meals and so much processed food here. So I think there probably is more that doesn't get eaten after it's cooked here. Whereas in the West, it's more gets wasted before it's cooked. That's just sort of my sort of observation on it. Yeah.
All right, guys, I would like to take the opportunity to bring our fifth panelist, somebody who wants to talk a little bit about why America politicizes so much about China news and why it's not only China news. So let us all welcome Mr. Paul Walkabout Rojo.
Buenas noches.
Hello.
Hi,
¿Cómo
Paul.
están ustedes, mis amigos? I'm so happy to be
This
here,
is the
guys.
English version.
Oh, sorry, guys. My Chinese is getting better, but my Spanish is getting worse now that I live in China. But thanks, guys, so much for having me. I'm so happy to be here. Jerry, long time since I've seen you, brother. We'll share a burger next time. Ziv, thank you so much again. Fernando, thank you so much. And Lee, this is my first time collaborating with you, man. Big fan.
Yeah.
I'm so happy. But you went to the Intercontinental Hotel.
We did.
As the biggest hotel nerd on the internet, I am super jealous and I don't want to talk to you anymore.
I was thinking about you, Paul. I was like, you should have been there with them.
I wish I was. I've been wanting to stay at this hotel. It's one of the most unique hotels in the world. But okay, so let's talk about
pretty cool.
Let's talk about politics. So I'm wearing this hat, all right, and you can't have a show like this and talk about China-American relations without having an American on and talk about American culture. Because I know I get a lot of hate. I know I do. And, Americans do deserve it in many ways. But okay, so I got this hat on. You see this in China all the time. It's this and the NY, right? LA and New York. And everyone wears them. Everyone walks around and nobody knows what it is. And so I always tell them, look, you realize that's baseball. And they go, what? What, baseball? No, this is a popular brand. I like the brand. That's what they say. And I say, no. This is baseball. And if you know baseball, I'm a huge baseball fan. And if you know baseball, you know that the LA Dodgers and the New York Yankees used to be crosstown rivals in New York. And that has continued to this day. Los Angeles Dodgers versus New York Yankees. We're all hoping to see that World Series sometime in the future. Now, I grew up in LA, so the LA Dodgers are my team. And anytime you have a player on another team, you say, oh, I hate them. They're terrible. God, I hope they sick. I hope they get sick. I hope they die. And then maybe a year later, a trade happens and that player comes and plays for your team. And you think, oh my God, this is the most amazing player in the world. I hope he lives forever. So it's not so much a matter of is it better or is it worse, the policies and games and sports, but is it my team or your team? And that is a culture in America that a lot of people forget. We have such a competitive culture and it permeates our society, and it stems from democracy. Democracy is a clash of ideas. It's a clash of two teams. Well, many teams in many cases, but what we've seen in the last few years is a giant polarization in democracy. And that is because, in my opinion, of money interests. So, is it my team or your team? And it becomes tribalized. Is it Republicans versus Democrats? Is it China versus America? And this is the cancer. But at the same time, it needs to be celebrated because it is our way. It's a messy way, democracy. But in our belief, this is what we fight for. We fight to have fights. We fight to have arguments. We fight to have differing opinions. And out of this clash of ideas should come the best result, the optimization of ideas. What we've seen, though, and my personal opinion is American money, the politics of money, as campaign finance laws have come into place, it's gotten much harder for these parties to raise money to win elections. And so they're taking the money from these special interest groups. And those special interest groups, unfortunately, are running the show. And special interest groups revolve around money. And the two biggest economies in the world are China and America. And at the end of the day, I think it all comes down to money. But again, I'm an LA Dodger fan. I love my Dodgers, but at the end of the day, I love the game. I love the game of baseball. All you got to do is you got to go to a game where there's two teams that aren't, you don't know very much about, and you watch the game be played, and you fall in love with it again, and you realize it's a game. Politics permeates our lives in so many ways. You can't get away with it. You can't get away from it. And that's something that we should celebrate. These debates, these pros and cons, anti-China, pro-China, we should be celebrating the fact that we have these two sides. You can't have heaven without hell. You can't have good without bad. We have to meet in the middle, and we have to compromise. And that's what I hope we will see in the future. I just had to get that off my chest, guys. I've been in the background listening to this. So that's my 2 cents. All right, brother.
That is good, Paul.
I want to ask a question to the panel. Okay, sorry, Ziv, go ahead, and then I ask a question.
I'm just saying, it's so true. I was thinking about it earlier as well. It's just politics. It's the game, and people enjoy it, and they won't stop.
I love it. And you know what? The Chinese are, and you ask Americans this, and you ask them, okay, are the Chinese good at this game? They're very good, and the Americans know it. Americans are also good at it, but we play it in a different way. Who else is very good at it? Russia's very good at it. So, but the thing is, we have two sets of rules, and that's where the clash is. America's democracy, where China, Russia, these are kind of one-party states. So they're playing by different rules, but they're all playing the same game. And it's when you step back, I've been away from America now for 5 years. I've been able to look into my country from afar and see the game being played from the outside a little bit. And I'm having more fun watching this than ever before. So,
well, the question that I wanted to ask is, Paul.
Sure.
What happened to Jack Ma? I mean, this is a topic that was kind of like very public yet private, very China, very personal to China. And then people started asking, oh, where is Jack Ma? He's been sent to some kind of camp. He's been sent to be re-educated, or he has been disappeared. Lots of people, lots of YouTube channels, lots of real media, social media talking about this. I thought to myself that was the silliest thing ever. Let me tell you why. This is a man who, according to what I know, right, the information that I have is he applied 10 times to go to Harvard, and he failed 9 of those times. Do you think that this guy is at any point a quitter? Not at all. So what happened with this IPO that he was trying to bring forward? It was not the right way. It was not done properly. There were some mistakes that were made. So basically they stopped it and they said, hey, go do your homework, go do it again. What is he doing? I think he's just out there fixing his problem so he can come out and do it correctly the next time. But that's just my thought about that. How do you guys feel about this particular issue, how it was treated, how it was presented?
I think that he gave some good materials for some YouTube videos for a few people.
Yeah.
For disappearing. I think at first it's very surprising, right? Jack Ma disappeared. Again, the media is sensationalizing it, and people love, talking about these kind of celebrities. It's unexpected for someone in that stature to disappear, and so I think. But yeah, I agree with you. It's after the initial shock, you try to think rationally. And, sometimes people like that want to keep a low profile for a while.
Very, very true. Anybody else? Any comments on this?
I'm inclined to think slightly differently.
Sorry, go on, Jerry.
Okay, I'm inclined to think slightly differently to you, Fernando. I think that he's probably a little disappointed, and he would have been leading up to one of the world's biggest IPO. And when that was stopped, he probably just told his managers to sort it out and decided to take a holiday. He's been talking for months, years even, about retiring from his lead role in his businesses, handing it over to the panels that deal with each different aspect of his business. He doesn't have boards and committees in the same way that most companies do. But I think he might have just decided, well, I'll step back and see how they manage it. And then if he needs to, he can come back in. I think he's a member of the NPC, and he didn't appear in the last, or if he did appear, I didn't see any news of him appearing in the meeting just a couple of weeks ago, or the last couple of weeks. So it's really strange that he hasn't appeared for that or anything else, although he has reappeared, and we do know where his jet has been, apparently. So, yeah, I think he's just taking a break. That would be my view. That's what I'd be doing if I was him.
He's right, Jerry. He's probably sitting on a beach enjoying his billions already earned, you know?
Yeah,
that's what I would be doing if I was him, yeah.
I would imagine he's probably a little bit embarrassed about what happened, but he's also lying low. And as Jerry said, his jet from the sort of public records has been jutting here, there, and everywhere by the looks of it. So he's, unless that's ghost flights to give some information to people, but I doubt it. He's probably fine, I would imagine. You know, I don't think the government have disappeared.
He's not hurting, buddy.
I'll just bring one comment right here, guys. From Manzana, thanks for this one. In China, rich businessmen cannot influence politics, unlike in the U.S.
I disagree.
100% agree. I agree.
Really? I disagree.
No, I think they have some. I think they have some. I mean, as far as I'm aware, government have a meeting, or government officials have meetings with the heads of a lot of the big companies here, and they help sort of decide and guide policy, as far as I was aware. So
that's right.
I don't mean that they cannot influence at all, but not as much as in the US.
Yeah, I would agree.
How do you
with
disagree? Explain that to the crowd. How do you disagree?
Oh, you asking me?
Yeah, Paul.
Oh, me. Oh, you might not be to the extent of America, but definitely to say that rich Chinese businessmen don't influence politics here is not correct. They obviously do. I mean, that's part of the society. It's built into the society here. In America, it's kind of it's legal bribery of politicians, and it's done through special interest groups, through PACs and all this stuff, and everyone knows that. And again, that goes back to my point. The problem with American politics, specifically, is they try to fix all this campaign finance crap and where people get the money. Well, that just made it harder for politicians and the parties to raise money to run their elections, and so now they have to go to little shady ways to do it. There's almost no accountability. They need to eliminate these laws and allow people to give unlimited amount of money to these politicians. And when that happens, there will be accountability, and they won't be spending this time raising money year after year and have 18-month elections. It'll be like it'll be much, much shorter. Everyone will know where the money is coming from, and they can govern properly. Instead of kowtowing to special interest groups, they can actually work for the people again. And that's what I think. I know it sounds counterintuitive, but you know, I've looked into this. I've studied it. Political scientists who are generally more moderate have also agreed with this idea that the constraints on money raising is actually causing one of the biggest problems in America right now.
Guys, I would like to bridge us into probably the last topic of today's show. Basically, we want to be as balanced as we can. Although the title of today's video is, well, why China news gets politicized so much. We are very much aware that well, China also politicizes news and events that take place around the world, and we wanted to bring some of these comments or examples to give a bit of balance to this discussion. How do you guys feel that China does in that respect?
Can you give me an example?
Ziv,
who are you asking?
Hold on one second. Ziv had a comment and he wanted to bring out something balanced about bias in the news. So,
what you mean this comment here? The bias in the news?
Yeah.
Can you remind me what I said earlier today? I'm a little bit now.
Basically, you were saying that it's a game that two play. I mean, West will take news from China and they will kind of like spin it, but China will do that too.
Right. Yeah, of course. I mean, look, and everybody's biased. The news, like today, I was showing you earlier, right? I was looking at the some websites that monitor biases in the news reliability, and a lot of most medias are biases, right? What I found interesting is that politicizing China from the US they're partisan, pretty much, like whether you are right or left wingers in the US, you find what to politicize when it comes to China news. So they have a common ground there, from what I see a lot of times, at least. You may agree or not.
Yeah, it's the Democrats will criticize China about certain things, and then the Republicans will criticize China about something else, because they all deal with China in different ways.
I think it's hard to find not biased news these days. I mean, there are some websites, I think, and maybe a few TV channels in the world. I'm even talking about the whole. I mean, at least US and China, but and a lot of news is biased. So you need. I think Lee said something earlier when we spoke on WeChat, right? You said, what did you say? It was like the skill. We talked about the skill of
critical thinking.
Critical thinking.
I mean, I think people are more drawn to negative news, and ultimately news is a business, and it's a business to make money. And so you've got to attract the eyes or attract the click, and the more sort of outrageous your headline or the more negative your headline, probably the more it will get clicked, hence the more money it will generate. So I think that's why there's this thing where people will put these sort of sensational or negative stories, because it will generate more eyes and more clicks and more money.
So it's not just politics; it's purely money too. That so you could have anchors, you can have news people. You can have news people that are not even against China, but it brings them more money, so they just go with it.
Yeah, on WeChat, the conversation actually led to us talking about YouTube channels and social media, and things like the art of clickbaiting or creating the proper thumbnail that is actually going to get clicks and views. How do you feel about YouTube channels and social media actually having an effect on, politicizing whatever takes place in China?
I'll talk. Well, first of all, none of us look good in a bikini, so that's one thing. And because of that, a lot of these YouTube channels have to find other ways to get that click, like Lee was saying. And Ziv, you're absolutely right, man. And it's all about money. It all comes down to that, man. It really does.
But you can attract people.
Sorry,
I'm sorry.
I'm saying you can attract people. I like I said, I do media for 16 years now, right? In the printed magazine business, and it's the same in printed magazine. Although you have people holding the magazine in their hands, you still need to get them to actually read the words on the page, because they look at the picture first, right? And they look at the title first. How are you going to make them read an article that someone worked very hard on writing? So I think there is a way. It's a skill, right? It's an art to make the entry point, the title, the thumbnail in when it comes to YouTube, in a way that is not exactly a clickbait. Like we spoke earlier about Lee's nice video that I watched yesterday about the Quarry Hotel, right? You should go watch it if you haven't yet. And I think the thumbnail said $2,500 suite in this first world Quarry Hotel. And actually, I don't think that's a clickbait. I think they show the suite, they show the and that was the most interesting and attractive part of the video, of pulling the people in, and that's what they used. But this is not politics. It's not politicizing anything. It's not hurting anyone, and it's not a lie. That is okay. but you need to really work hard in finding those points with keeping integrity. I mean, intact.
Yeah, I mean,
That's the art form that you have to master. Man.
Jerry,
yeah, I mean, if
you've
you
been
look
quiet
at
for a bit.
Probably because I'm not very active on YouTube. I'm pretty active on Twitter, but YouTube, I'm not a YouTuber. So I'm listening to your guys' comments, and I mean, the clickbait thing is a very valid thing. How do you attract people? And I think when it comes to news, you've got flavor. Really, it's you choose your flavor of news, and then you listen to, watch, read, or buy the news that you want. You're not going to get anti-China news if you're listening just to pro-China. You're not going to get pro-China news if you're listening to CNN and those kinds of worldwide mainstream media. So the fact is, you've got to choose your news based on your own experiences. And really, if you want to have a critical mind and be open-minded, you've really got to start looking in places alternative to news. And perhaps YouTube is the answer to that. Social. People like myself, money doesn't mean anything to me in terms of my social media. I'm never going to make money on social media ever. I don't monetize anything. I never have, and I probably never will. So what I say, you can buy it, or you can take it or leave it. I mean, when I say buy it, I mean you can buy into it. You take it or leave it. This guy's got nothing to offer that is being paid for. It's a simple fact. This is what he sees. This is what he does, and that's the kind of news that I like to see.
All right, guys, I would like to bring one comment very quickly because I want to explain this. Manzana says, so these 5 Jews are ignoring all of us this whole time. Look, I'm very new to this. I'm learning how this thing actually works, this particular software. So my eyes need to be in very different places at the same time, and it's a little bit confusing.
We actually brought up one comment from this person, right? Before.
Yeah, Manzana,
Already,
yeah. What I'm saying
so
is,
he's the only one we didn't ignore.
I've kicked people out by accident. So yeah, I need to keep my eyes on other things. So I apologize for that. But these comments, they're all going to be on playback, so we can all go back and visit them. And I will spend the time in our own channels going back and looking at those. Gentlemen, we always said that we wanted the WuMao show to be sweet, short, and very juicy. Are there any things that
Paul is laughing at short, juicy. I mean, we can pick better adjectives, man. Come on.
Well, we wanted to...
I think Caliber Wings is hanging around here, of course, and he was saying, guys, you need to talk about WuMao stuff.
Yeah,
this is the WuMao show. Well, anyone has a suggestion?
No, so let's take a few questions from the audience, okay? Questions from viewers. We're going to give you guys a couple of minutes and see what you guys have to say, and then we'll address them, okay? In the meantime, while people are asking the questions, I want to say one thing. I've mentioned in our last live stream, Ziv, the China time, right? When we celebrated the first anniversary of course, China. Go subscribe. That I'm going to Xinjiang. I'm going to Xinjiang at the beginning of next month, and I would like to also announce that a superstar is also joining me. Mr. Caliber Winks is coming to Xinjiang with me.
He's going to be a cameraman, like he asked.
No. You know who my camera woman is. I'm married to her, but he's also coming because he wants to see for himself as well. And this is something that is going to be really, really cool, to be able to show people from very different perspectives and different camera qualities. So, ladies and gentlemen, Caliber Wings also coming to see.
But I bet you're not biking there like Mr. Jerry Gray.
I don't have the
Somebody just asked that question. Yes, I just saw that. Yes,
Jerry's
very great. Yes.
Jerry's on his way to Yunnan. When do you leave, Jerry? You leave soon.
Well, we just changed our plan. We were leaving Saturday. We're now leaving Sunday. We've got to come.
Jerry, leave now. Leave now. You're going to get there before Fernando.
Get there before. Well, no, we'll go a different direction. But yes, Jerry is the guy who rode to Xinjiang. Yeah.
When I see
how long will you be on the road for, Jerry?
On this trip, it will be about 2 months.
How long will you be on the road for?
3 weeks out, 3 or 4 weeks back. I posted the details on Twitter just yesterday. I'll send you a link.
Cool.
Sorry, carry on. Fernando, go on.
No, guys. So that's it. Let's see what else is there to. Okay, Donna says looking forward to your Xinjiang too, but this is not exactly a question. Jerry, it says, all right, guys. Basically, I think that
someone is asking, what's the Quad Alliance? What do we think about the Quad Alliance? Australia,
Quad
India,
Alliance.
USA, and Japan. Yes. What are we? Do you guys have any answer to that?
I don't see the question here, but we could answer it. What do we think about the Quad Alliance?
I'm not sure why Australia are in there, because they don't produce vaccines. And the Quad Alliance was about vaccines, getting 1 billion vaccines. Is that the same one we're talking about? I'm a little confused by this. Yeah, the Quad Alliance was about getting 1 billion vaccines out to basically the global south or the third world or whatever we call that now. But yeah, that was the problem, and I don't see how Australia could be very much involved. They just sent 8,000 vaccines to Papua New Guinea, but they blocked vaccines going out there and medical treatment going out there a little while ago. So I'm not sure 8,000 vaccines is very helpful.
Guys, I think we probably about to round up this video. I just wanted to mention one more time why we thought about making this video. The politicization of news and events that take place here in China contribute to the anti-Asian sentiment.
Oh, we lost him.
Oh, Fernando is gone? Well, okay, this is still working.
Ziv, take over, brother.
I think Fernando was talking about why we're doing this show, right? I think he may be back.
He's back.
There he is.
Yeah, Fernando, you were saying?
Yeah, I was saying that I think that I forgot where I was.
You put
that this video is very important. This video is very important because let me see, because I'm looking at the left.
Anti-Asian sentiment.
Yes, the anti-Asian sentiment in the West, and there's a lot of people who have very large pulpits and who have a very large audience, and the power of the words are really enormous, and they can do a lot of damage even if they don't want to, even if they don't mean to, and that's one of that we wanted to bring attention to. There are things that are happening in China that are worth commenting on. There are things that are happening in China that should be criticized, should be questioned, should be right. We all agree on that.
Yes.
But there are things that are as silly as saying that food rationing is something that Jack Ma is hiding, that's probably being killed. I mean, there's silly things that don't contribute to anything. In fact, they're just exacerbating the feelings. And I had a video where I could show you the increase in violent attacks against Asian population. Jerry, you had a number, right? Do you mind bringing it back?
I just went online just before we became live to talk about the increase. But in 2019 in New York, there were 3 anti-Asian hate crimes recorded. In 2020, in the same month, there were 29. So it's increased by a factor of 10. That was 2020. That's just one city. All over the country, I believe that this is a realistic figure, a factor of 10, the number of Asian hate crimes, anti-Asian hate crimes that have happened or are happening now. And we still don't know whether this incident of the shooting in Atlanta was a hate crime. But I mean, let's be honest, the targets were 3 Asian massage places. So I suspect it was.
So when people actually come out and say that the motives are not certain, I mean, there's too many coincidences to say that, in my opinion.
I think it's like anything else. There is a lot of evidence to suggest that it might be, but it's not provable. It's circumstantial evidence.
I think the bottom line of this podcast and conclusion should be: people exercise critical thinking, please.
Yes.
All right. Well, guys, I want to thank you all for your time. I mean, I'm very, very happy the team that we created with the WuMao show. Thank you so very much for the support to this idea. Thank you very much for your time. It's very late in the evening. And thank you all for watching as well. Those who have sent super chats, those who have sent stickers and whatnot. And those of you who watch and share these videos, thank you so very much. Make sure to go to each and every one of our channels and subscribe.
Right.
This and all those good things. Guys, I want to thank you again personally very much for joining this panel. Paul, we'll be seeing you next week. What are we talking about next week? Do we want to talk about that right now, or we leave
Maybe,
it?
Yeah. I think we should mention.
Go ahead, man.
Gentlemen, you need to subscribe to these channels because the next WuMao show is going to be about religion in China. We're gonna hit that on a nail. So if you want to know what we think and what experience and what we can show you in terms of religion here in China, make sure to subscribe to our channels and meet us over here.
So it's funny. Next week is just before the Passover, which I'm organizing this Jewish holiday here in Dongguan in China for like the 10th time in a row. So yeah, we can talk about this religion.
That'd be great.
So a quick reminder, we are 11 people in our WuMao group, and the number is growing little by little. So yeah, you see different faces, different perspectives, different opinions. I love the fact that Paul and Ziv disagreed on a couple of things because that's what we want to bring you. Yeah.
But there's the thing. That's the big thing. We can disagree, but we're still brothers. You know, that's the whole point. You know, we don't go to our trenches and lob, grenades at one another.
I'm going to defend you on WeChat.
All right, guys. Thank you so much. And as always,
right.
love you all. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Take care.
Bye-bye.